Hey guys, my name is Mariel Stanish, and today I'm going to be talking about athletes in social media. So, the reason why I wanted to go over this is because I know we all, or at least a lot of us, are on Twitter, and a lot of us, follow athletes, and, sometimes it can be a good thing, but I'm here to argue that it can be a bad thing. So, my research question was, what is the effect of athletes using social media on maintaining reputation? And my argument is that athletes should have limitations on what they can post on social media. What we already know is some social media is banned for athletes in some colleges, and the reason why they do this is just to protect them. Make sure that they're not, getting in trouble, or a student is saying something about them or talking bad about them. So that's just mainly for their protection. And then we also already know that some athletes have already gotten into trouble from what they've posted on social media, and I'm also going to provide some examples on that so you guys can see where I'm coming from. Why does this matter? It matters because it affects future athletes, both collegiate and pro, and what they can do as far as social media and what they're allowed to say. So, in my first argument, I'm saying that athletes can post inappropriate things on social media. It's happened quite frequently. In one of the articles that I've looked at by Steve Hummer, Cover Story Social Media, When Tweets Go Bad, he gives us some examples. One of the Falcons receiver on George Zimmerman's case, he tweeted, "All them jurors should go home tonight and kill themselves for letting a grown man get away with killing a kid." So, I mean, that's just not something that is really appropriate to say, especially for someone who's going to be in the limelight and is looked at. Another example that he gives us is the Buffalo Bills receiver Stevie Johnson in 2010. He says this on Twitter, blaming God for a dropped pass, saying, "I praise you 24/7, and this is how you do me? You expect me to learn from this? How? I'll never forget this." So again, this can just be seen in a poor way and just not something that he might want to be saying. Another example from an article called "Social Media Does Athletes No Favors" by Kyle Goon, Orlando Magic guard Gilbert Arenas tweeted, "This girl said I was disrespectful, and I was thinking, is this broad gonna get me a sandwich or not?" So again, that's just another comment that's just a little degrading, and people could see that as a very negative way, and it kind of reflects other athletes and how they may say things and the organization that they work for as well. Another example, it's not just pro athletes that do this, it's Olympic athletes have also gotten into trouble. In an article called "Social Media Lesson After Greek Expelled" by Sean Fitzgerald, pardon me for the pronunciation, but Paraskiva Paparizou, in this article, he says, or tweets, "With so many Africans in Greece, the West Nile mosquitoes will be getting home food." So again, maybe to him it was funny, but others could take that to heart and think, wow, like that's really mean, and it just makes him kind of look bad, and he ended up being expelled of the Olympic Games because of that. So some people may say, for the counter argument, just tell them not to post things that would be considered inappropriate, and like, yeah, you could say that, that's the obvious answer, but assistant professor Homero Gil de Zuniga. He's a professor at the University of Texas School of Journalism, and he points to an aspect of human-computer interaction that makes tweeting a socially risky undertaking. He says the misuse of Twitter is due to a lack of understanding of the power of social media. If you were in the middle of a public square, you wouldn't yell something you might post on Twitter, but in reality, when you tweet, that's what you're doing. That's hard to understand when it's you and a keyboard. There's a sense of intimacy and to some degree anonymity. It doesn't feel like you're talking to 2 million people. And so he kind of backs up the statement that, like, okay, well, this is why they do this. This is kind of what's happening. So, I mean, yeah, you could say that they just couldn't do it, but this is why that's happening. This is why they tweet that. In my second argument, athletes can get into arguments with their fans on social media. I've actually seen this just recently on Twitter. I use Twitter and I follow a lot of Colts players, and one of my followers, or that I do follow, or one of the athletes I do follow, is Pat McAfee, who is the Indianapolis Colts punter. And he got into an argument on Twitter over the season finale of Breaking Bad. The story goes, he tweeted something along the lines of, "Whoever Walter was, people must have loved him before he passed." The problem with this tweet was that before he tweeted this before the West Coast could see the last episode, so he got a lot of hate tweets sent his way, and it caused him to get to an argument with at WDM And so he continued to say that people that are worried about something being spoiled after it already happened should stay off Twitter. With that being said, dude's dead. And so After he said that, Sue chimed in saying, "The show's way over your head anyways, hashtag arrogance." And so instead of, backing down, the argument went back and forth a couple times, and finally he ended his argument with her saying, "That's not an answer, Sue. Let's get back to your ridiculously rude name calling." And he could have stopped there, but he didn't, and he continued to move forward, and he started tweeting some sarcastic stuff using like the hashtag Spoiler King, referring to himself. He tweeted things like O.J. Simpson steals cookies and Miley Cyrus, in an attempt to drop the Hannah Montana image, will take a long vacation at Twerk Island. So again, just some stuff that could be considered inappropriate and kind of a little bit too far. And people see that as something as negative. And again, they're in the limelight and they're seen all the time, so this could be kind of a bad thing. And some say, for the counter argument, some say he could have, just stopped the argument. He could have just stopped talking. Okay, yes, that is true. But then we have Chris, who represents some of the Olympic athletes, says that many athletes do not understand how quickly they can go from being adored to no longer wanted based on a few messages that were potentially misinterpreted or poorly structured. So again, I think it's a part of just a little bit of athletes don't realize it's just like a light switch that you can turn it on and off. Like anything that you say, once it's seen, that is how you're viewed. How you put it and how you say, that is what people see. And that's how they interpret what you say. So I think that's just another example of how athletes need to be careful and should be limited on what they say and how they say it. My third argument is there are more negatives for athletes using social media than positives. The reason why I say this is because there's an article that I read, a ridiculously short story of hacked athletes written by O'Brien. And the example that he gives is Tyler Sequin was traded, and when this happened to him, a tweet came out saying, "Only steers and queers in Texas, and I'm not a cow." And after this was exposed, he claimed that his Twitter had been hacked and he had shut it down. So that's just an example of if you're going to be hacked, then it's already what if someone says something bad, like what if someone makes you look bad? So that's just another reason how easy it is can get to make your reputation look bad. Another reason is some fans are not so loyal. And I say this as a negative thing because if fans are not loyal, it's easy for you to get back into an argument, just like how Pat McAfee did in my first argument. Again, in this O'Brien story, current Blue Jays catcher quit Twitter in 2011 while he was a member of the New York Jets. In a statement, he says, "It was just constant negativity. As a team, we weren't playing well. Personally, I wasn't playing well. Every time you opened your phone, you had all these Twitter notifications, and it says, 'You stink, you suck, you should jump off a bridge,' and I don't need that." So, again, those are just some negative things that can easily turn into, a poor discussion on someone's part. And so the counter argument for this is, yeah, you can ignore the bad tweets, and you can, that's true. But Josh Toll, who is another current Blue Jays catcher, says, "It is easier said than done. You're always going to see it. For guys to say I don't read it, well, you're going to read it because if you're scrolling through, that's what pops up." So again, it's just another example of how, okay, if it's already negative and it's easy for you to get an argument, then why be a part of it? So in my conclusion, I'm going to take a Hammer quote from one of his articles, and this is from Jimmy Sanderson, who is an assistant professor and program director at Clemson's Department of Communication Studies, and he says, "I'm of the belief that social media and Twitter have changed sports in an unprecedented way. Athletes have a media channel to say what they want, how they want, and teams don't have the control the way that they used to." And so I think that athletes and social media can be a downfall when used incorrectly. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to use it at all, because some athletes are pretty positive about it. Like, for example, Matt Overton, who's a long snapper, does what he calls hashtag the morning snap, and it's very positive and uplifting. But not everybody is like that, and I think there should be some restrictions on what people can say. Reputation is important for athletes, for themselves, as well as the organization they represent, and having restrictions on social media, I believe, could help save a good reputation.